What up? Takeho washisu. And this is BBC Asks. How do you feel about identity politics? Should the two be mixed together? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Well, at the annual English festival known as the Academy of Ideas, a comedian, a feminist activist, an online gamer, a law student, and an author get together to debate and share their very interesting perspectives on the matter of identity politics. And this one will have to split into several episodes. So first up, let's hear what author and academic Dr. Joanna Williams has to say.
Why does it agitate you, this identity politics?
Well, I'll just start by perhaps stating the obvious, but I think identity politics is everywhere nowadays, and we have seen it so much this weekend where nearly everybody who speaks in any of the discussions feels the need to preface their remarks by saying, speaking as a woman, speaking as a mother, speaking as an academic, and it's these kind of biological, often biological, but not always kind of assumed cultural identities that have really come to define each other. We use them to define each other. I don't think identity politics is eating itself. I wish identity politics would eat itself. And I think that there are two key things that I'd really like to bring out today that I think are problematic with identity politics, the way it's being framed today. First is just it's incredibly limiting. It's about defining ourselves based on the most biological, the most boring aspects of our identity and not being able to move beyond that. This is not transformational, this is limiting. Second thing is that often claims to identity are based on victim status, and we become involved in what's termed a kind of oppression sweepstakes, where to be able to maintain our identity, we have to outdo other groups based on who is the most victimised, and I think that's incredibly unhelpful. I actually think the name identity politics is wrong. I think this has nothing to do with politics. I think it's more about narcissism. It's about a complete obsession with the self, and we can't relate to the world other than how we see ourselves in it.
So, what do you think about Joanna's take? Does she have a point? Leave a comment down below. And next up is someone who would normally disagree with every point Joanna made. Journalist and feminist activist Julia Bindel, who was actually a part of the Simone de Beauvoir movement in the early 60s.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Julie?
Well, this is probably the last time I'll say this on this panel or ever, but I completely agree with everything that you have just said. It is narcissism. I lived through the first tranche of identity politics in the proper women's liberation movement, which I joined in 1979. The 80s were dogged with it. It was terrible. This is now complete second wave identity politics, but with one key difference. It's not political. There are no politics involved at all. I think that we can see which groups are given more credence than others, and it is absolutely without any question whatsoever the men's rights activists who speak through the prism of transgenderism, who will say and be patted on the back for saying it, speaking as a trans woman of colour, when in fact they're just a white man with a beard, and can shut up, and this has recently happened when the trans activist Paris Lees, who was raised male, who is white, told Nimco Ali, who is a campaigner against female genital mutilation, who is black, who is from Somalia, she was told that she was practicing white, capital W, feminism, capital F. So if a white man can tell a black woman that they have the absolute authority, the moral, ethical, political authority on something, the world has gone fucking crazy.
Right, there we go. She doesn't disappoint, does she?
Damn, homegirl went hard. Did her take surprise you? Well, in this last bit, comedian and playwright Andrew Doyle will provide an equally calpe and very logically perspective on IP.
Anyone else? Right, yeah, Andrew.
Actually, something that Joanna said really reminded me. I was recently listening to the radio and there was a talk about bullying in schools. A man who was on there prefaced it with that statement, speaking as a parent, which to me must be one of the most annoying phrases in the English language, basically. It's right up there with I'm not racist, but, isn't it? It's a terrible sort of phrase to preface an argument with, because it implies a couple of things. This really troubles me about this. It implies, firstly, that he has a special kind of authority to talk about this subject by virtue of the fact that he's reproduced. And there's also an insinuation, isn't there, that if you haven't made the mistake of reproducing, that you're not capable of empathising with a child, right? Which to me is really, I mean, I don't because I think they're parasites, but nevertheless. And this can be applied to all sorts of ways. Once you start saying speaking as a gay man, speaking as a black man, speaking as a woman, all of that logic is implied in what you're saying. And I don't like the idea that certain people should have the right to talk about certain ideas and other people should be excluded from those elements of debate, because I think it's anti-enlightenment, it's against the notion of common humanity. I mean, we all have these differences, but ultimately we're all human beings, aren't we? So shouldn't that be the starting point? That's my view.
So, whose take did you like the best? Who had the most interesting perspective on identity politics? And on the next episode, we'll hear from a gamer, a law student, and an author, and at some point, a very engaging debate will ensue. So until then, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you on the flip side. Peace!